And I don't think the public are going to be at all impressed in the conduct of Parliament. And any Tory MP, in my view, that backs this is anti-democratic, and they will face a vote of no confidence, a deselection, because members will be that angry that they will hold them to account on this. No Tory MP should be backing such a rotten anti-democratic report.
We were taking a look at what Boris Johnson's options are next. Let's speak now to David Campbell Bannerman, who chairs the Conservative Democratic Association. Big supporters of Boris Johnson. Morning, David.
Morning, Matt.
We spoke before. You were a big supporter of Brexit. Parliament was sovereign. Parliament set up this inquiry. Parliament's delivered its verdict. Parliament will vote on Monday. Boris Johnson's absolutely bang to rights, isn't he?
No, I don't think it. I don't think he is actually, Matt. I think this is a complete outrage. Actually, I think it's actually undermines parliamentary sovereignty, drags Parliament into the gutter. The way they behave would be totally unacceptable in the rule of law. Any court in the land would not allow this. The judge would be dismissed, Harriet Harman in this case, and the jurors thrown out.
What is it in the report, David, which you think is an outrage? Because they've literally just written down what Boris Johnson said at various points and then contrasted it with the evidence we can all see with our own eyes.
I mean, that they were determined to find him guilty right from the start. That was obvious. It's a political show trial. It's like Stalin, to be honest.
David, maybe he was guilty from the start. It wasn't that they set out to prove he was guilty from the start.
Guilty of what? I mean, look, Lord Panic, Boris's lawyer, who advised what's her name, Gina Miller, on the Constitution. He's hardly a Boris supporter. But he says there was no evidence provided. And this is all done really on sort of hearsay and their opinion. And it's outrageous, including, of course, Bernard Jenkins, who Guido Fawkes alleges had a party of his own, or was part of a party during lockdown. I mean, it's totally hypocritical. It's a political show trial. And it really drags our democracy into the dirt, this.
Isn't the truth, David, that you just like Boris Johnson and you're sad that he's not Prime Minister anymore? That's the bottom line. And that's Boris Johnson's fault, not this committee's fault.
This is far, far bigger than about Boris, about one individual. This is about democracy, why CDO is so concerned, because this is destroying our parliamentary democracy. I mean, it's a sham. I mean, Margaret Ferrier got 9 days and Boris gets 90 days. She put at risk the lives of 400 people on a train going to Glasgow. And Boris, he nearly lost his life actually pursuing the case for a vaccine and trying to solve the COVID problem. This is not proportionate. It's totally unfair. And I think it's a sham.
So is your contention that the 30,000 words, 100-page report, the 90 days suggested suspension, is that the problem? Do you accept that he misled Parliament? When he said the guidance was followed, and he was told not to say that, and he knew guidance wasn't followed because he was at those events, do you accept that he misled Parliament, but actually all the hullabaloo is out of proportion? Or do you think that Boris Johnson is a man who told the truth?
The evidence has to be that he knowingly misled Parliament. He went out of his way to lie to Parliament. There was no evidence of that whatsoever, as Lord Panic points out. And also they invented a charge, wonderful, like Cromwellian. This is recklessly misled. So, I mean, they invented this. They made it up as they went along. I mean, the whole conduct of this...
David, just wait a moment. There is they say he deliberately misled the House, and he deliberately misled the committee, and they've laid out the evidence. He was told, do not say all the guidance was followed, and he said all the guidance was followed. Never mind what people assured him, he saw it with his own eyes. He attended...
That is an interpretation. I mean, ministers get advice from all sorts of advisors all the time. You have to say, did he go out of his way? They have not met that test. Did he go out of his way to deliberately mislead Parliament for his own ends? There's no evidence of that. He unwittingly misled because of the advice given. And I don't think it was very good advice, to be honest, a lot of it. But he certainly didn't recklessly mislead. They came up with that charge, which they weren't able to stick on him. But I don't think there is the evidence on this, and I encourage people to look at Boris's very robust rebuttal to this, which actually makes a lot more sense.
Oh, come on, David. Boris Johnson's response today does not make any sense at all. It is all over the place, talking about nudist colonies, and actually he's demeaning himself, isn't he, in the response to this? If he'd stuck to the facts and the charges laid against him, that's one thing. But he's gone a bit potty with all this, hasn't he?
No, I think, look, this was set up right from the beginning. It was political. Boris is responsible for Brexit, and so he's got to be brought down. And, that's what it's really about. It's a coup to get rid of Boris, nail it on him. I mean, honestly, depriving the man of a pass, the former prime minister, 90 days, 10 times as much as Margaret Ferrier spreading COVID all around the Glasgow trains. I mean, this is not fair. And I don't think the public are going to be at all impressed in the conduct of Parliament. And any Tory MP, in my view, that backs this is anti-democratic, and they will face a vote of no confidence, a deselection, because members will be that angry that they will hold them to account on this. No Tory MP should be backing such a rotten anti-democratic report.
Wouldn't the democratic thing to have been for Boris Johnson to stay in Parliament and then stand for re-election in his constituency? This 90 days would have triggered a recall petition and then likely a by-election. The democratic thing to have done was for him to stay, make his case, fight his corner, and then people like you who think he's still very popular would have been vindicated because he'd have won.
No, I don't think so, because it was all loaded against him. The whole intention of this was to force him into a by-election. He's called their bluff by.
No, but David, if the committee and the blob or whatever it is all mounted against him, at odds with the public who love Boris Johnson still because he got Brexit done and got us the COVID vaccine and so on. If what you're saying is right, and the democratic thing is that Boris Johnson has been forced out anti-democratically, the democratic thing would have been for Boris Johnson to put that to the test and stand in Uxbridge.
Well, let him stand in Henley or Mid Beds or another by-election. I think that is entirely conceivable. And if Central Office block him, which I believe has been rumoured that he's not allowed to move across to another seat, like Henley, he's got a house at Henley, then he might stand as an independent Conservative, which is what Zach Goldsmith did, if you remember. And then 6 months later, he was made a formal Conservative candidate in Zach Goldsmith's case. There are options here, and let the public decide, but in a different constituency, because this is one against Boris.
One with a bigger majority, because Boris Johnson took that Uxbridge seat and came very close to losing it last time round, and would probably lose it this time round. Because actually, it went
up last time. And,
so why not stand there then? If he was still that popular, why not stand in Uxbridge?
Well, I mean, in these circumstances, with this Stalinist trial, this report against
David, I'm sorry, that is offensive.
I actually, by the way, Ashcroft.
David. No, wait a moment, David. It is offensive to people who died in Russia to call this Stalinist. It's a select committee report chaired by Harriet Harman.
Sorry, Matt, it is not offensive. It's. Look at the manner of it. Look at the disproportionality. Look at the...
David, you can't say disproportionality and then say it's Stalinist.
It brings the rule of law into disrepute. It brings Parliament into disrepute. I mean, for heaven's sake, you've got the Deputy Speaker, allegedly, according to Guido, holding a lockdown party of her own and drinks. Now, what's the Speaker going to do about that? I want the Speaker to have an inquiry into the Deputy Speaker and all those that attended that party, according, allegedly, to Guido Fawkes. That's what should be happening. Of course, it's all a one-way process. It's all attacking Boris, but anyone else can get away with it, including Starmer and his rather suspicious beer swilling, breaking social distancing guidelines up in Durham. That was not properly dealt with. And this is all totally one-sided, which is why the public believe this is a coup.
No, they don't. No, they don't. 2/3 of people would say Boris Johnson was right to resign last week.
Yeah, he's right to resign in order to fight back, and he will fight back, and he will have the last word and the last laugh. I can tell you that. He's a clever man, and he will come back, I think. And those that have brought him down are going to pay a very heavy price, I fear.
And your message to Rishi Sunak this morning, David?
I would say you better give Boris a seat, or it's you're on borrowed time, to be honest.
And just looking ahead to the Tory party conference in the autumn, do you expect Boris Johnson to be there as the sort of the star turn in some way?
Well, he'll be there and he'll be speaking to CDO, I should imagine. We will have a big event at party conference, a democracy zone, a CDO, and anyone who believes in democracy and proper democracy is very welcome to that democracy zone. So we're on the case with this, and this is about democracy. As I say, I'm very concerned. I gave up my job as an MEP to defend parliamentary sovereignty with Brexit. And this is undermining that parliamentary sovereignty, and that is a tragedy.
David Campbell Bannerman, good to speak to you this morning, the chair of the Conservative Democratic Organisation.